So what I want to talk about is overcoming fear. Because whether we acknowledge it or not, fear is probably one of the biggest hindrances that we all face. Now, when you talk about fear, you talk about what that really is. And fear is your belief in something or someone's ability to hurt, harm, or destroy you. I'll say that again. Fear is your belief in someone's ability to hurt, harm, or destroy you. It causes an unpleasant emotion towards that. Now, with that being said, I would venture to say that a lot of you that are watching this video right now, you're hindered in some form or another based on fear. Maybe it's in your business. Maybe your business is not going to the next level because it's something that you need to do. It's something that you need to step out on, but the fear, the thought of the unknown, the thing that you are projecting in your mind of what could happen is stopping you from moving forward. Now, one of the best examples or definitions or quotes that I ever heard about fear came from this movie called After Earth with Will Smith. And I want to read to you exactly what this quote is. I didn't want to paraphrase it. So I want to read to you exactly what this quote says. And Will Smith says, the only place that fear can exist is in our thoughts of the future. It is a product of our imagination, causing us to fear things that do not at present and may not ever exist. That is near insanity. So most of the time, the things that we are fearing are things that are not even present yet. It's a product of our imagination. Most of the time, we allow ourselves to tell ourselves a story. Will Smith also goes on to say in that movie that that day his story changed. Now, if you think about it, what goes on in your mind when you have to make a decision? What goes on in your mind when it's time to move forward? A story. You're either telling yourself a story of what you want, or you're telling yourself a story of the worst case scenario and what you don't want. Our imaginations have been programmed to what if in the future. The problem with that is that most of the time when we're what ifing in the future, we're what ifing the negative. We're what ifing our fear. Now, some of you may be saying, well, RJ, I know that. I know that fear is there. I know that fear is present. But how do you get rid of fear? Well, I always say in order to get rid of a thing, the first thing you have to do is figure out where does that thing come from. Now, over the years, I've studied, I've tried to figure out what exactly is fear. How does fear take root in my mind? Where do these thoughts come from? How do they come up? How do I take something that's very, very small and in my mind build it up to this worst case scenario? And now I have this fear in me that is hindering me from moving forward. Well, here's the thing. If I had to break fear down to its basic essence of what it really is and how it gets in you, fear is just a product of information. I'll say it one more time. Fear is simply a product of information. Now, some of you may be saying, well, RJ, I don't really believe that. Think about it for a second. You don't fear anything that you don't have an abundance of negative information on. There's nothing in your life right now that you're fearful of that you don't, if you don't have an abundance of negative information on it, there's no reason to fear because you would not be considering that thing. So let's take an example. Let's just say you're sitting down, you're watching TV, you're having a good time, and all of a sudden your shoulder starts to hurt. So you go to Google and you Google what happens when my, right shoulder starts to hurt. And you start reading all of these things. You start gathering and taking in, and watch this word, exposing yourself to all of this information about what it means when the right shoulder hurts. And somewhere in there, you come across something that says, well, your right shoulder is connected to this nerve that's connected to this organ, which means that this organ is going bad. Now, all of a sudden, as a product of that information, your imagination now is projecting or considering an illness that you would have never considered if you didn't have that level of information. So a lot of times, in order to overcome fear, we have to be really diligent about what we expose ourselves to. We got to be really diligent about the information that we take in that is the opposite of what we want. When it comes to your business, and I work with a lot of entrepreneurs, I work with a lot of aspiring entrepreneurs. A lot of us as entrepreneurs, we've heard stories like only the strong survive in business. Business is not for the weak. Business is not for the faint-hearted. Business is hard, it's tough, and everybody doesn't make it. You've heard all of these things over the years. Now, because you've heard all of these things, you've taken in that information. Now, when something goes not according to plan in your business, guess what? The first thing that comes up, the first thing that you consider, that's a strong word too, that word consider. The first thing that you consider, the first thing that you start to what if is in the direction of the most information that you have on that particular subject. Because think about it, if the only information you had on the subject of business and entrepreneurship was as long as you do what you're supposed to do, of course you succeed, then guess what? You would never consider anything else. Look at some of the things in your life right now that you never doubt, that you never waver on. You know why? Because you don't have negative information surrounding whatever that thing is. I don't waver anymore about putting out tons of videos or content on social media. Why? Because I no longer take in the information or allow myself to ponder on the information of, well, what if people don't want to see this? Or what if people aren't paying attention? I only talk to the people that's paying attention anyway. For those that don't, I'm not talking to you in the first place, right? So the fact that I've overcome that, I no longer have fear in that area because I don't expose myself to the information. Now, a lot of us, that word exposure is key because a lot of times we expose ourselves in ways that we don't even understand that we're exposing ourselves. Sometimes information comes in, for lack of better terms, very tricky ways because you can expose yourself to bad information in one simple phone call with a family member or friend, right? Because you can be talking to somebody else that's an entrepreneur and they can say, you know, I'm making it, but it's tough. And you can say, yeah, you know, it is tough. That conversation alone is now bad exposure. Anything that causes your mind to consider something different outside of the outcome that you desire, any information that does that will produce fear. And when fear is there, it is more than likely that you won't move. The problem with that in life and business is that you cannot remain safe and successful at the same exact time. What do I mean by that? A big part of life is about taking chances, taking risk. Now, they can be calculated risk. You can look at variables and make sure you don't do something that's just absolutely ridiculous, but you have to, at some point, put yourself out there when it concerns life, business, relationship. You got to put yourself out there. Right now, if there's somebody that you're interested in, guys, ladies, whatever the case may be, somebody got to make the first move, right? Somebody has to overcome their fear and say something to that other person, right? Now, there is a possibility that that person may not feel the same way, so be it. But you can't remain safe and successful. So you can't remain sitting in your home, everything's fine, you're safe, doors locked, and expect that other person to know how you feel. The same thing in business. If you have a business right now, you can't remain safe. You can't remain in fear because you got to put yourself out there. One of the biggest things in business is not being obscure, not being in a position to where nobody knows what the heck you're doing, who you are, or what you have to offer. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how good it is. If nobody knows that it's there, nobody knows that you have it, nobody knows how to get it from you, then it really doesn't matter. So at the end of the day, fear can be a big thing that we have to overcome. One of the first things we got to do is pay attention to exposure. The second thing we have to do is pay attention to our environment, because your environment can breed fear as well. See, understand something. When you're trying to grow in this life, when you're trying to advance in this life, you got to understand that you are ground. When I say you are ground, that means that whatever seed that you put into yourself is supposed to grow you into the level that you want to go to, right? Because we got all types of principles that we know. We got the principles to better business, the principles of how to make money, the principles of how to have a better relationships, the principles of how to have better health. All of those principles are great. But remember, I always say a principle is only as good as the person or the spirit or the ground that it comes into contact with. So your environment becomes really important, because what happens when you plant a tropical plant in a cold Arctic climate? Guess what? It doesn't matter how good that seed is, that plant is not going to grow because the surroundings aren't conducive. So who are you around? Who are the 5 key people that feed you every single day? Are they feeding you in line with information that feeds your fear, or are they feeding you with information that feeds your faith? Because see, I am of the belief that in this life, you can only go one of 2 ways. You're either going all the way full speed ahead toward what you want, or you're going all the way full speed ahead toward what you don't want. Think about that. Everything about you is going in one of those 2 directions, or you become the person that you're directly in the middle. One day you're going toward what you want, and the next day you're going toward what you don't want. And a person in the middle, you're not set. You're of a double mind, and you will get nothing because you're like a seesaw. One day you're in it, one day you're out of it. One day you're building your business, the next day you want to quit. One day you're in your relationship, the next day you want to get out of it. You haven't picked a side just yet. But when you pick a side and say that I'm going 100% toward my goals, that's mentally, spiritually, emotionally, and physically. Everything I do, everything I take in, everything I talk about, everything I believe is going toward that goal. And you'll pay attention to your environment. You'll make sure that the people and the conditions around you are conducive for you to grow. So exposure, environment, and experiences. Experiences are interesting because a lot of times we build our lives based upon either our past experiences or the past experiences of other people. We can listen to somebody talk about their not so good situation, and after we listen to their experiences, guess what? Now it will cause us to consider, well, what if that happens to me? So if you understand how important it is to overcome fear in your daily lives, you'll understand why I'm saying it's absolutely crucial. You can't let this thing slip. So I just wanted to share that with you guys. I wanted to share with you 3 key things that you can pay attention to, because remember, fear is only a product of information. What information are you taking in? Even the subtle information from TV, subtle information from conversations. What do you speak? What are you saying? Are those things, I should say, are they contradictory to what you want? If they are, then guess what? That's the wrong information. That information then is feeding you to go more toward your fear than your faith. So with that being said, you guys, pay very close attention to your exposure, your environment, and your experiences. And I'll talk to you soon.